But sometimes you don't go away. Sometimes that shark, he looks right into you, right into your eyes. You know the thing about a shark, Chief? He's got lifeless eyes, black eyes, like a doll's eyes. When he comes at you, he doesn't even seem to be living until he bites you. Those black eyes roll over white, and then you hear that terrible high-pitched screaming. Ocean turns red, and despite all the pounding and hollering, they all come in and they rip you to pieces. Anyway, we delivered the poem. Japanese slammed 2 torpedoes into her side, Chief. He's coming back from the City until late. He just delivered the bomb. The Hiroshima bomb. 700 men went into the water. Vessel went down in 12 minutes. Didn't see the first shark for about half hour. Tiger, 13-footer. You know how you know that in the water, Chief? You can tell by looking for the dorsal to the tail. What we didn't know was that our bomb mission had been so secret, no distress signal had been sent. They didn't even list us overdue for a week. Very first light, Chief. Sharks come cruising. So we formed ourselves into tight groups. It was kind of like you see in the calendars, you know, the infantry squares in the old calendars, like the Battle of Waterloo. The idea was the shark come to the nearest man. That man starts pounding and hollering, and sometimes the shark, he'd go away. Sometimes he wouldn't go away. Sometimes that shark, he looks you right into you, right into your eyes. You don't think about a shark, he's got lifeless eyes, black eyes, like a doll's eyes. When he comes at you, he doesn't even seem to be living until he bites you. Those black eyes roll over white, and then hear that terrible high-pitched screaming. Oceans turn red, and despite all the pounding and hollering, they all come in, and they rip you to pieces. You know, by the end of the first dawn, lost 100 men. I don't know how many sharks, maybe 1,000. I don't know how many men. They averaged 6 an hour. Thursday morning, Chief, I bumped into a friend of mine, Irby Robinson from Cleveland. Baseball player, bosun's mate. I thought he was asleep. I reached over to wake him. He bobbed up, down in the water, like kind of a top up in it. Well, he'd been bitten in half below the waist. At noon the 5th day, Mr. Lockheed Ventura swung in low, and he saw us. He was a young pilot, a lot younger than Mr. Hooper here. Anyway, he saw us. He come in low. 3 hours later, a big fat PBY comes down and starts to pick us up. You know, that was the time I was the most frightened, waiting for my turn. I'll never put on a life jacket again. So, 1,100 men into the water, 316 come out, sharks took the rest. June 29th, 1945. Anyway, we delivered the bomb. Japanese submarine slammed 2 torpedoes into her side, Chief. He was coming back from the island of Tini until late. He just delivered the bomb. Hiroshima bomb. 1,100 men went into the water. Vessel went down in 12 minutes. Couldn't see the first shark for about a half hour. Tiger, 13-footer. You know how you know that in the water, Chief? You can tell by looking from the dorsal to the tail. What we didn't know was that our bomb mission had been so secret, no distress signal had been sent. And even listed us overdue for a week. Very first light, Chief. Sharks come cruising. So we formed ourselves into tight groups. Kind of like you see in the calendars, you know, the infantry squares into the old calendars, like the Battle of Waterloo. And the idea was the shark come to the nearest man. That man, he starts pounding and hollering, and sometimes the shark, they go away. But sometimes, you wouldn't go away. Sometimes that shark, he looks you right into your eyes. You know the thing about a shark? He's got lifeless eyes. Black eyes. Like a doll's eyes. When he comes at you, he doesn't even seem to be living until he bites you. Those black eyes roll over white and then, you hear that terrible high-pitched screaming. Oceans turn red, and despite all the pounding and hollering, they all come in and they rip you to pieces. You know, by the end of the first dawn, we lost 100 men. I don't know how many sharks, maybe 1,000. I don't know how many men. They averaged 6 an hour. Thursday morning, Chief, I bumped into a friend of mine, Herbie Robinson from Cleveland, baseball player, bosom mate. I thought he was asleep. Reached over to wake him up. He bobbed up and down the water. He was like a kind of top, upended. Well, he'd been bitten in half below the waist. At noon on the 5th day, Mr. Lockheed Ventura swung in low and he saw us. He was a young pilot, a lot younger than Mr. Hooper. Anyway, he saw us and he come in low, and 3 hours later, a big fat PBY come down and starts to pick us up. That was the time I was most frightened, waiting for my turn. I never put on a life jacket again. So 1,100 men went into the water, 316 men come out. Sharks took the rest. June 29th, 1945. Anyway, we live in the world. Anyway, we live in the bone. Japanese submarine slammed 2 torpedoes into her side, Chief, because coming from island of Tinian to Lake. We just delivered the bomb. The Hiroshima bomb. 1,100 men went into the water and vessel down in 12 minutes. You see the first shot for about a half hour. Tiger. 13-footer. You know how you know what that in the water, Chief? You can tell by looking from the dorsal tail. What we didn't know was that our bomber should have been so secret. No distress signal had been sent. It didn't even let us open through for a week. Very first light, Chief, sharks come cruising, so we formed ourselves into tight groups. It was kind of like you see in the calendars, you know, the images graphs in the old calendars, like the Battle of Waterloo, and the idea was that the shark comes to the nearest man. And man, he started pounding and hollering, and sometimes that shark he'd go away. Sometimes he wouldn't go away. Sometimes that shark, he look you right in the eye, right into your eyes, you know. The thing about a shark, he's got lifeless eyes, black eyes, like a doll's eyes. When he comes at you, he doesn't even seem to be living until he bites you. Those black eyes roll over and fight, and then you hear that terrible high-pitched screaming. Oceans turn red, despite all the pounding and hollering. They all come in, and they rip you to pieces. You know, by the end of the first dawn, it's about 100. I don't know how many sharks, maybe 1,000. I don't know how many men, they average 6 an hour. On Thursday morning, Chief, I bumped into a friend of mine, Herbie Robinson from Cleveland. Baseball player, bosom mate. Thought he was asleep. I reached over to wake him up. He bobbed up down in the water. He was like a kind of top, upended. Yeah, he'd been bitten in half below the waist. At noon the 5th day, Mr. Lockheed Ventura swung in low and he saw us. He was a young pilot, a lot younger than Mr. Hooper. Yeah. Anyway, he saw us and he come in low, and 3 hours later a big fat PBY comes down and starts to pick us up. You know, and the first time I was most frightened, waiting for my turn. I'll never put on a life jacket again. So, 1,100 men into water, 316 men come out. The sharks took the rest. June 29th, 1945. Anyway, we delivered the bomb.
This advertisement was authorized by Mike Webb.
Anyway, we delivered the bomb.